thought this Christmas would finally be the moment my family understood how successful I'd become. Standing in my parents' living room with my brand new $3,000 laptop open, I was video calling potential clients from Peterson Marketing when my 8-year-old nephew Tyler appeared beside me. Without warning, he lifted an entire can of grape soda and deliberately dumped every purple drop across my keyboard and screen. As I gasped in absolute horror, watching months of work disappear under the sticky liquid, Tyler looked me straight in the eye and slowly raised his middle finger with a satisfied smirk. My brother Jake and sister-in-law Amanda rushed over immediately not to apologize, but to defend their precious angel. The grape soda continued dripping from my destroyed laptop onto Mom's antique Persian rug, each drop marking the end of everything I'd worked toward. My name is Monique. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent the last 3 years building my freelance graphic design business from nothing. That laptop contained client files worth thousands of dollars, portfolio pieces I'd spent months perfecting, and software licenses that had drained my savings account. Tyler's sweetie accidents happen, Amanda cooed, pulling her son against her designer dress while he continued grinning at my devastation. Jake crossed his arms defensively, his jaw set in that stubborn expression I remembered from childhood arguments. "Monique, you're completely overreacting." My older brother declared, his voice carrying that condescending tone he'd perfected since becoming a father. "It's just a computer. Kids do these things." Just a computer. I stared at him in disbelief, watching purple liquid seep between the keys of my professional lifeline. The Peterson marketing executives were still visible on the screen, witnessing this entire disaster unfold during what was supposed to be my biggest presentation of the year. "Jake, that laptop cost $3,000. I managed to say, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Tyler didn't accidentally pour soda on it. He deliberately destroyed months of my work. Amanda's perfectly manicured fingers tightened protectively around Tyler's shoulders. Her blonde highlights caught the Christmas tree lights as she fixed me with a cold stare that could freeze champagne. "Maybe if you weren't so focused on flaunting your fancy gadgets, children wouldn't be curious about them," she snapped. "You've always been jealous of our perfect family because you're still single and childless at your age. This is just another one of your dramatic episodes." The accusation hit me like ice water. Around us, the Christmas party continued with forced normalcy. Cousin Sarah whispered something to her husband David, both of them shooting disapproving glances in my direction. Uncle Robert's wife Helen shook her head sadly, clearly believing Amanda's version of events. Only my parents looked genuinely concerned, but they remained silent, trapped between supporting their daughter and keeping peace with their grandson. "Jealous?" I repeated, incredulous. "Amanda, your son just destroyed my entire business setup and gave me an obscene gesture. How exactly does that make me jealous?" Tyler giggled behind his mother's protective embrace, apparently delighted by the chaos he'd created. He reached for another cookie from the nearby tray and deliberately crushed it in his fist, letting crumbs scatter across the hardwood floor. Amanda pretended not to notice, her attention focused entirely on attacking me. "You're clearly having some kind of breakdown," she continued, her voice rising to ensure the entire family heard every word. "Maybe you should talk to someone professional about these anger issues. Tyler is just a curious child, and you're acting like he committed some terrible crime." I frantically pressed the laptop's power button, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage. Nothing happened. The screen remained black grape soda pooling beneath the device like digital blood. My cloud backup system had failed during a software update last week, and I'd been too busy preparing for today's presentation to notice. 3 months of client work gone, portfolio pieces that had taken weeks to perfect destroyed, software worth hundreds of dollars ruined. Jake stepped closer, his broad shoulders blocking my view of the rest of the family. "Look, Monique, I get that you're upset, but making a scene at Mom and Dad's Christmas party isn't helping anyone. Tyler's 8 years old. He doesn't understand the value of expensive electronics. He understood enough to flip me off afterward. I shot back, gesturing toward his son, who was now smearing cookie frosting on the coffee table, while Amanda continued ignoring his behavior. "You're imagining things," Jake insisted. "Tyler would never do something like that. We've raised him to be respectful and well-behaved." Respectful and well-behaved. I watched Tyler grab a handful of Christmas ornaments from the lower tree branches, examining them with obvious destructive intent. When Great Aunt Lucy approached to gently redirect him, he stuck his tongue out at her and clutched the ornaments tighter. My phone buzzed with a notification from the Peterson marketing video call. The executives had disconnected, probably assuming I was unprofessional and disorganized. This contract would have paid my rent for 6 months and established connections with major corporate clients. Now they'd witnessed my nephew destroying my equipment while my family defended him. "Jake, I need you to understand how serious this is," I said, trying one more time to reach whatever remained of my brother's conscience. "I just lost my biggest client because of Tyler's behavior. That laptop contained everything I needed to grow my business." Amanda laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the Christmas music playing softly in the background. "Oh, please, Monique. You act like you're running some major corporation from your tiny apartment. It's a hobby business at best. Maybe this is a sign that you should find a real job instead of playing around with art projects." Playing around with art projects. 3 years of building client relationships, developing skills, establishing my reputation in a competitive industry, reduced to playing around with art projects. I felt something crack inside my chest, like ice breaking under pressure. Tyler dropped the ornaments he'd been holding, and they shattered against the floor with crystalline finality. Amanda simply guided him away from the broken glass without a word of correction or apology. Jake bent down to clean up the mess, muttering under his breath about how accidents were normal at family gatherings. I closed my destroyed laptop and gathered the pieces of my professional life, knowing this Christmas had just become the beginning of something much larger than a simple holiday disagreement. The next morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I'd spent most of the night calculating financial losses and trying to contact clients about the delays Tyler's destruction would cause. My mother, Patricia, knocked gently on my childhood bedroom door, carrying a steaming mug of coffee and wearing the worried expression she'd perfected during my teenage years. "Honey, we need to talk," she said, settling carefully on the edge of my bed. Her silver hair was still in curlers, and her reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. "About yesterday." I accepted the coffee, gratefully wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic to stop them from shaking. "Mom, if you're here to tell me I overreacted, I'm not ready to hear it. Actually, I'm here to tell you something you need to know about Tyler." Patricia glanced toward the closed door, then lowered her voice to a whisper. "This isn't the first time he's deliberately destroyed someone's property." My coffee mug paused halfway to my lips. "What do you mean?" Patricia pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, scrolling through her photo gallery until she found what she was looking for. "I've been documenting incidents for months, hoping Jake and Amanda would eventually address Tyler's behavior. Look at these." The first photo showed Mrs. Henderson's front garden, where a collection of ceramic gnomes had been systematically smashed to pieces. The destruction was thorough and deliberate, not the random damage typical of childhood accidents. Each gnome had been carefully positioned before being destroyed, creating a pattern of calculated vandalism. "Tyler did this 3 months ago," Patricia explained. "Mrs. Henderson saw him from her kitchen window, taking his time to destroy each piece individually. When she confronted Jake and Amanda, they claimed Tyler was just playing and offered to pay for replacements. They never made him apologize or face any consequences." The next photo made my stomach turn. Tyler's elementary school playground featured several broken windows, the glass scattered in deliberate piles rather than random patterns. According to the timestamp, this had happened just 6 weeks ago. The principal called it an unfortunate incident during recess, Patricia continued. Jake and Amanda insisted other children must have influenced Tyler's behavior. They donated money for window replacement and demanded the school improve supervision instead of addressing Tyler's choices. But the third photo completely destroyed any remaining doubt about Tyler's character. My cousin Emma's wedding dress hung in tatters, from its protective garment bag, the delicate lace and beading systematically shredded beyond repair. The destruction showed careful attention to detail, each tier precisely placed to cause maximum damage. Emma was getting married last month. Patricia whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Tyler somehow got into the bridal suite during her dress fitting and spent 20 minutes methodically destroying her grandmother's vintage gown. The dress was irreplaceable, passed down through 4 generations of family history. I set down my coffee mug with shaking hands. What did Jake and Amanda do? They claimed Tyler was exploring and didn't understand the dress's importance. They offered to buy Emma a new dress, but refused to acknowledge that Tyler had deliberately destroyed something precious to hurt her. Emma was devastated, but she didn't want to ruin family relationships by pressing the issue. The pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear. Tyler wasn't an impulsive child making innocent mistakes. He was a calculating destroyer who targeted items with special meaning or value to his victims. My laptop, Mrs. Henderson's beloved gnomes, Emma's family heirloom, the school's property, each incident showed escalating sophistication in his destructive choices. Mom, why didn't you tell anyone about this before? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I kept hoping Jake would see the pattern and get Tyler professional help. I documented everything in case it became necessary, but I never wanted to believe my grandson was capable of such deliberate cruelty. A knock on the front door interrupted our conversation. Through my bedroom window, I could see Jake's expensive SUV parked in the driveway, loaded with enough luggage for an extended stay. My heart sank as I realized what this meant. They're staying for the entire week, Patricia confirmed grimly. Jake announced it last night after you went to bed. He says Tyler deserves a proper Christmas vacation with his grandparents. I watched my brother unload suitcases while Amanda supervised from the passenger seat, her phone pressed to her ear. Tyler bounded out of the vehicle and immediately began examining Dad's carefully maintained garden, his expression calculating and predatory. There's something else, Patricia added reluctantly. Amanda has been telling family members that you're having emotional problems and need professional help. She's convinced several cousins that your reaction yesterday was evidence of a mental breakdown. The systematic campaign to discredit me was already beginning. Amanda understood that controlling the family narrative would protect Tyler from consequences, while painting me as an unreliable witness to his behavior. By the time this week ended, my entire extended family would view me as the problem, not Tyler's destructive actions. My phone buzzed with a text message from cousin Sarah. Monique Amanda told us about your outburst yesterday. Maybe you should consider talking to someone about managing stress better. Tyler's just a little boy. Another message arrived from cousin David. Your laptop situation sucks, but attacking a kid seems extreme. Amanda's worried about you. The manipulation was already working. Amanda had spent less than 24 hours rewriting yesterday's events, transforming Tyler from deliberate destroyer into innocent victim of my supposed instability. By week's end, I'd be the family villain while Tyler continued his pattern of calculated destruction with complete impunity. I watched through the window as Tyler approached Dad's prize-winning rose bushes with obvious intent. This was going to be a very long week. By noon, Tyler had already managed to accidentally knock over 2 potted plants and somehow break the handle off Mom's favorite coffee mug. Each incident followed the same pattern: deliberate destruction followed by wide-eyed innocence and immediate parental protection. I was documenting everything on my phone when I suddenly remembered Dad's recent security upgrade. Dad installed new cameras last month. I told Patricia as we watched Tyler examine the Christmas tree ornaments with predatory interest. After the Henderson break-in scare, he put cameras everywhere. Dad was in his workshop behind the house, probably hiding from the family tension. I found him organizing tools with the methodical precision of a man avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Robert had always been the family peacekeeper, but yesterday's events had clearly shaken his usual diplomatic approach. Dad, I need to see the security footage from yesterday's party, I said without preamble. His weathered hands paused over a set of screwdrivers. Monique, honey, I'm not sure that's wise. Sometimes it's better to let family disagreements settle naturally. Dad Tyler deliberately destroyed $3,000 worth of equipment, then gave me an obscene gesture when I reacted. I need proof of what actually happened because Amanda's already convinced half the family that I imagined everything. Robert sighed deeply, the sound of a man who'd spent 65 years trying to keep peace in an increasingly chaotic family. The cameras do cover the living room where your presentation was happening. I suppose we could take a look. His home office occupied a converted bedroom with multiple computer monitors displaying feeds from cameras positioned throughout the house and yard. Dad had embraced technology surprisingly well for his generation, creating a comprehensive security system that would make professional installers proud. Here's yesterday around 4:30 when your video call started, he said, pulling up the relevant footage. The recording showed everything in crystal clear high definition. Tyler appeared at the edge of the frame carrying his grape soda with obvious purpose. He paused near my setup, looked directly at the laptop screen where Peterson marketing executives were visible, then deliberately lifted the can and poured its entire contents across my keyboard and monitor. But the most damning evidence came next. After destroying my laptop, Tyler stepped back and practiced raising his middle finger several times, perfecting his gesture, before turning toward me with calculated timing. The footage captured his satisfied smirk as I gasped in horror, and Amanda's immediate rush to defend him, despite witnessing his deliberate actions. "My God," Dad whispered, watching his grandson's performance. "It was completely planned." "Can you save this footage?" I asked. "I need evidence for insurance claims and potential legal action." Dad was already copying files to multiple backup drives when heavy footsteps announced Jake's arrival in the office. My brother appeared in the doorway, his face flushed with anger and something that looked like panic. "What are you two doing in here?" Jake demanded, his eyes immediately focusing on the computer screens. "Dad, please tell me you're not reviewing private family moments with Monique." "Jake, we're looking at security footage of Tyler destroying Monique's laptop," Dad replied calmly. "The cameras captured everything." Jake's expression shifted from anger to calculation as he processed this information. "Dad, I need you to delete that footage immediately. Tyler's just a child, and recording him without permission violates his privacy rights." Privacy rights. I stood up from the chair, incredulous. "Jake, your son, committed deliberate destruction of property. This footage proves he planned the entire incident." "Tyler's 8 years old," Jake shot back. "He can't plan anything sophisticated enough to be considered criminal. You're trying to criminalize normal childhood behavior." Dad continued copying files while Jake became increasingly agitated. "This footage stays in my house on my security system," Robert said firmly. "If Tyler destroyed Monique's property deliberately, there should be consequences." Jake's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Dad, if you don't delete this footage right now, I'll contact my lawyer about privacy violations and harassment of my minor child. We'll also cut off all contact between Tyler and his grandparents. Is protecting Monique's wounded pride worth losing your grandson forever?" The threat hung in the air like smoke from an electrical fire. Dad's hands trembled slightly as he realized Jake was serious about severing family relationships to protect Tyler from accountability. My brother had just revealed the lengths he'd go to avoid addressing his son's destructive behavior. "Jake, are you seriously threatening to keep Tyler away from Mom and Dad unless they help cover up his actions?" I asked, my voice barely controlled. "I'm protecting my son from a vindictive aunt who's trying to turn his grandparents against him," Jake replied coldly. "Tyler made an innocent mistake and you're attempting to destroy his relationship with family members who love him." But Dad surprised us both by calmly completing the file transfer and removing the backup drives from the computer. "Jake, I've been documenting security incidents in this neighborhood for months. This footage is part of that record, and it's staying exactly where it is." Jake stared at his father with an expression I'd never seen before, something between rage and desperation. Fine. But when Tyler asks why Grandpa and Grandma don't love him anymore, you can explain how you chose Monique's laptop over your own grandson's well-being. He stormed out of the office, leaving Dad and me staring at computer screens that showed Tyler's calculated destruction in endless, damning detail. The 8-year-old boy, who'd seemed merely spoiled yesterday, had revealed himself as something far more concerning: a child who understood exactly how much damage he could cause and felt no remorse about causing it. Through the window, I could see Tyler in the backyard methodically snapping branches off Dad's carefully pruned fruit trees, while Amanda talked on her phone, completely ignoring the destruction happening right behind her. Monday morning brought the professional devastation I'd been dreading. My phone started ringing at 7:30 with a call from Margaret Peterson, the senior marketing director who'd witnessed Tyler's attack through our video conference. Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected millions of dollars in corporate spending. "Monique, I need to discuss Friday's incident." Margaret began without preamble. Peterson Marketing prides itself on working with professionals who maintain appropriate business environments and demonstrate reliability under pressure. I gripped my phone tighter, knowing exactly where this conversation was heading. "Margaret, I sincerely apologize for the disruption. What happened was completely unexpected and beyond my control." "Beyond your control?" Margaret's tone suggested she found this explanation inadequate. "Monique, our executives witnessed a child destroying your equipment while you lost complete composure during a crucial presentation. This raises serious questions about your judgment and ability to maintain professional standards." The unfairness of her assessment hit me like a physical blow. Margaret, an 8-year-old, deliberately poured soda on my laptop and made an obscene gesture. Any reasonable person would have been upset by that behavior. Any reasonable person would have secured their workspace and maintained professional boundaries, Margaret replied coolly. Additionally, the family dynamics we witnessed suggest ongoing personal issues that could affect your reliability as a vendor partner. I could feel my biggest contract slipping away along with the financial security I'd worked 3 years to build. Peterson Marketing represented $20,000 in annual income, plus connections to other major corporate clients who trusted Margaret's vendor recommendations. "Margaret, please reconsider. I've delivered exceptional work for Peterson Marketing for 18 months. One family incident shouldn't negate my entire professional track record." Monique, business relationships require trust and predictability. Friday's events demonstrated that your personal life creates risks we can't accept. Peterson Marketing will be terminating our contract effective immediately. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in shocked silence. $20,000 in guaranteed income gone because my nephew had deliberately sabotaged my presentation while his parents defended his actions. But Margaret's call was just the beginning. By noon, I'd received messages from 2 smaller clients who'd heard about the Peterson Marketing termination through industry networking groups. Apparently, Margaret hadn't simply ended our contract quietly. She'd shared details about Friday's unprofessional incident with other marketing directors as a cautionary tale about vendor reliability. Thomson Digital canceled a $5,000 website project, citing concerns about contractor stability. Creative Solutions postponed a planned logo redesign worth $3,000, requesting time to evaluate their vendor partnerships. Both companies mentioned hearing about family disruptions affecting work quality as factors in their decisions. I calculated the financial damage while sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by backup design equipment that couldn't replace my destroyed laptop's specialized software. $30,000 in lost income over the next 6 months, plus replacement costs for equipment Tyler had destroyed, plus potential legal fees if I pursued damages against Jake and Amanda. Meanwhile, social media showed Jake's family enjoying their Christmas vacation at my parents' house. Amanda posted cheerful photos of Tyler building snowmen and decorating cookies, presenting their picture-perfect family narrative to hundreds of online friends. The captions emphasize Tyler's creativity and enthusiasm while portraying their extended visit as a delightful holiday tradition. No mention of destroyed property, obscene gestures, or professional consequences. According to Amanda's carefully curated social media presence, Tyler was simply an energetic child bringing joy to his doting grandparents. She'd even posted photos of expensive new toys they'd bought Tyler as Christmas rewards for good behavior. Christmas rewards for good behavior. I stared at the images of Tyler surrounded by elaborate presents that cost more than most families spent on entire holiday celebrations. Jake and Amanda were literally rewarding his destructive actions while I dealt with the professional and financial fallout of his choices. My laptop insurance company added another layer of frustration to an already impossible situation. The policy covered accidental damage, but required police reports for deliberate destruction by family members. Filing such a report would formally criminalize Tyler's actions and potentially result in serious legal consequences for an 8-year-old child. Jake knew I wouldn't take legal action against Tyler regardless of the financial damage he'd caused. My brother was counting on my reluctance to criminalize a child's behavior, even deliberately destructive behavior that had cost me months of work and thousands of dollars in income. The insurance representative's voice was sympathetic but firm. Ms. Williams, without a police report documenting deliberate destruction, we can only process this as accidental damage. Your deductible would be $1,500, and coverage wouldn't extend to lost income or software licenses. $1,500 I didn't have for partial coverage of damage that wouldn't have occurred if Jake and Amanda had taught their son basic respect for other people's property. The system was perfectly designed to protect destructive children and penalize their victims. As afternoon faded into evening, I realized Tyler's actions had accomplished exactly what Amanda had hoped, demonstrating that my professional success was fragile and my position in the family was vulnerable. By tomorrow, Jake's family would return to their comfortable suburban life, while I struggled to rebuild everything their son had destroyed in less than 30 seconds. But they'd made one critical mistake in their campaign against me. They'd underestimated how far Dad would go to protect the truth, and they had no idea what Mom had been quietly documenting for months. The real battle was just beginning. Tuesday morning found me sitting in attorney Lisa Walsh's downtown office, surrounded by law books and framed diplomas that represented decades of legal expertise. Lisa specialized in family law and property damage cases, and her reputation for handling complex domestic disputes had made her my first choice for navigating this nightmare. "Monique, I've reviewed the documentation you provided," Lisa said, spreading photographs and printed emails across her mahogany desk. "The security footage clearly shows deliberate destruction, and your financial losses are well documented. This should be a straightforward property damage case." I felt a surge of relief for the first time since Friday's incident. Finally, someone with legal authority was taking Tyler's actions seriously instead of dismissing them as childhood mischief. However, Lisa continued, her expression growing troubled, "We have a significant complication that changes everything about this case." My relief evaporated instantly. "What kind of complication?" Lisa pulled out a thick manila folder that hadn't been on her desk when I'd arrived. "Your brother Jake contacted my office yesterday morning, approximately 2 hours before you called to schedule this appointment. He provided his own version of events and supporting documentation." The room seemed to tilt slightly as I processed this information. "Jake called you first. Jake claims that you've been exhibiting unstable and threatening behavior toward his 8-year-old son for several months. According to his statement, Tyler's actions on Friday were defensive responses to your aggressive confrontation, and your family is concerned about your mental health." Lisa opened the folder and showed me printed screenshots of text messages I'd sent to Jake over the past few months. The messages expressed frustration about Tyler's behavior during previous family gatherings, but Jake had carefully edited them to remove context and make my concerns appear irrational and threatening. "These are my text messages," I admitted. but Jake removed the parts where I described Tyler's destructive behavior. He made it look like I was attacking Tyler for no reason. "There's more," Lisa said grimly. She pulled out additional screenshots showing social media posts where I'd mentioned feeling stressed about family gatherings. Again, Jake had edited out references to Tyler's behavior, making my stress appear unprovoked and concerning. But the most damaging evidence was a video file that made my blood run cold. Jake had somehow obtained edited security footage that showed only my reaction to Tyler's destruction, not Tyler's deliberate actions that caused it. In the edited version, I appeared to be screaming at an innocent child who'd simply spilled his drink accidentally. Jake also provided statements from multiple family members expressing concern about your stability. Lisa continued. Amanda documented a pattern of what she calls escalating hostility toward Tyler, including detailed descriptions of incidents where you allegedly threatened or intimidated their son. I stared at the fabricated evidence in complete shock. Jake and Amanda had spent months building a case against me, carefully documenting edited versions of events while portraying themselves as concerned family members trying to protect their child from an unstable aunt. "This is completely false," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They've manipulated every piece of evidence to hide Tyler's deliberate destructive behavior." Lisa nodded sympathetically. "I believe you, but from a legal perspective, Jake has created reasonable doubt about the validity of your claims. More concerning, he's indicated that Amanda is prepared to seek a restraining order against you if you pursue legal action against their family." The restraining order threat was particularly insidious. If granted, it would legally prevent me from attending family gatherings or having contact with Tyler, effectively banishing me from my own family while protecting Jake and Amanda from accountability for their son's actions. "Can they actually get a restraining order based on fabricated evidence?" I asked. "Unfortunately, yes," Lisa replied. "Family courts prioritize child protection, and Jake's documentation creates a compelling narrative about protecting Tyler from an allegedly unstable adult. Even if the evidence is manipulated, proving that manipulation could take months of expensive litigation." I felt trapped in a legal maze designed to protect destructive behavior while punishing victims who sought accountability. Jake had understood the system perfectly and prepared his defense before I'd even realized I needed one. "What are my options?" I asked, though I suspected the answer wouldn't be encouraging. Lisa gathered the evidence files with practiced efficiency. "You could pursue property damage claims despite the restraining order threat, but you'd be gambling your entire family relationship on a legal outcome that's far from guaranteed. Alternatively, you could document future incidents and hope to build a stronger case over time." Document future incidents. Lisa was essentially telling me to wait for Tyler to destroy someone else's property or harm another person before taking action. The legal system offered no protection for victims of deliberate destruction by minor children whose parents refused to acknowledge their behavior. "There's one more thing," Lisa added reluctantly. "Jake mentioned that he's considering filing harassment charges if you continue what he calls your campaign against Tyler. He's positioning any future contact between you and his family as potential stalking or intimidation." The legal trap was complete. Jake and Amanda had created a situation where seeking justice for Tyler's actions would result in criminal charges against me, while Tyler continued his destructive behavior with complete legal protection. As I left Lisa's office with a bill for $300 and no viable legal options, I realized that Jake's strategy was more sophisticated than I'd initially understood. He wasn't just protecting Tyler from consequences, he was systematically destroying my credibility and isolating me from family support. But Jake had made one critical error in his legal maneuvering. He'd assumed that I was the only family member documenting Tyler's behavior, and he had no idea that Dad's security system was recording everything happening at my parents' house during their extended Christmas visit. The real evidence was still accumulating, and Jake's fabricated narrative was about to collide with documented reality. Wednesday afternoon brought a discovery that transformed my understanding of Tyler's destructive capacity. I'd returned to my apartment to work on damage control for my remaining clients when I noticed something disturbing about my home office setup. The room looked exactly as I'd left it, but subtle details felt wrong in ways I couldn't immediately identify. My backup hard drives were missing from their usual position beside my monitor. These drives contained 5 years of client work, personal projects, and irreplaceable digital archives that represented my entire professional history. I'd specifically positioned them in a secure location where casual visitors couldn't access or accidentally damage them. I searched frantically through drawers and shelves, hoping I'd simply misplaced them during recent reorganization efforts. But as I examined my workspace more carefully, additional problems became apparent. My expensive drawing tablets showed scratches across their sensitive surfaces, damage that would affect pressure sensitivity and accuracy. Design sketches I'd pinned to my inspiration board were torn and crumpled, some missing entirely. Then I remembered Thanksgiving dinner 6 weeks ago when Jake's family had visited my apartment for the first time. Amanda had insisted on giving Tyler a tour of my workspace while I was busy cooking, claiming he was interested in art and creativity. I'd reluctantly agreed, trusting that Amanda would supervise her son appropriately. But Amanda had spent most of that visit on phone calls with her real estate agent, leaving Tyler unsupervised in my office for nearly an hour. When I'd checked on him later, he'd been sitting quietly at my desk, apparently drawing with colored pencils I'd provided for his entertainment. Everything had seemed perfectly normal at the time. Now I understood that Tyler's quiet behavior had been a cover for systematic destruction. He'd spent that hour carefully sabotaging my equipment and stealing my backup drives, all while appearing to engage in innocent creative activity. The drawing he'd shown me afterward was simply camouflage for far more serious crimes. I calculated the replacement cost for missing and damaged equipment, $2,000 for backup drives, $1,500 for drawing tablets, plus hundreds of dollars worth of destroyed artwork and reference materials. Tyler had stolen and destroyed nearly $4,000 worth of professional equipment during his supposed art exploration. But the financial damage paled compared to the loss of irreplaceable work. Those backup drives contained client projects dating back to my first freelance contracts, experimental designs I'd planned to develop further, and personal creative work that existed nowhere else. Tyler had stolen 5 years of professional development and creative evolution. I called Jake immediately, though I already knew what his response would be. "Jake, Tyler stole my backup drives during your Thanksgiving visit. I need them returned immediately." "Monique, that's ridiculous," Jake replied without hesitation. "Tyler wouldn't know what backup drives are, let alone how to steal them. You probably misplaced them yourself." "Jake, he also damaged my drawing tablets and destroyed artwork. This wasn't accidental exploration, it was deliberate sabotage." "Tyler was drawing pictures at your desk," Jake insisted. "Amanda supervised him the entire time. If your equipment is damaged, you should be more careful about leaving expensive items where children can reach them." The gaslighting was becoming routine. Every time Tyler caused destruction, Jake and Amanda immediately rewrote the narrative to blame his victims for inadequate precautions rather than addressing his deliberate choices. "Jake, I want my backup drives returned by Friday or I'm filing a police report for theft." "Go ahead and file whatever reports you want," Jake said coldly. "But when the police investigate, they'll discover that you're a mentally unstable woman making false accusations against an 8-year-old child. Amanda has documentation of your concerning behavior patterns." The call ended with another threat, another reminder that Jake and Amanda had prepared legal defenses for Tyler's crimes while positioning me as the problem. But this time, their cover story contained a critical flaw. Amanda couldn't have supervised Tyler continuously because I'd witnessed her taking phone calls throughout the visit. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything I could remember about Thanksgiving dinner. Phone records would show Amanda's real estate calls disproving her supervision claims. Credit card statements would establish the purchase dates for stolen equipment, providing proof of their existence and value. Most importantly, I realized that Tyler's theft of backup drives indicated sophisticated planning and awareness of their importance to my work. An innocent child wouldn't understand the significance of those devices or know where to find them in my organized office space. By evening, I'd assembled a detailed timeline of Tyler's November visit, including photographs of damage I'd initially attributed to normal wear and tear. The pattern of destruction was becoming impossible to dismiss as coincidence or childhood curiosity. But as I prepared to contact insurance companies and potentially police about the theft, I received a text message that changed everything. "Monique, come to the house immediately. Tyler has seriously hurt another child and there are police here. Mom." Tyler's escalation had finally reached the level where external authorities would become involved, whether Jake and Amanda cooperated or not. I arrived at my parents' house to find police cars in the driveway and ambulance lights reflecting off the snow-covered lawn. My heart pounded as I rushed through the front door where I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table with a female police officer, while Dad paced nervously near the window. "What happened?" I asked immediately. Officer Jennifer Martinez looked up from her notepad with the weary expression of someone accustomed to domestic disturbances. "Tyler pushed another child down the basement stairs during a playdate. The injured child has a broken arm and possible concussion." My stomach dropped as I processed this information. Tyler had escalated from property destruction to physical violence, seriously injuring another child in my parents' own home. "Where are Jake and Amanda?" "They're at the hospital with Tyler and the injured child's parents," Mom replied, her voice shaky with emotion. "But Monique, you need to hear what happened before they came home." Officer Martinez finished taking statements and left with assurances that Child Protective Services would be conducting follow-up investigations. Once we were alone, Mom pulled me into the living room where Dad was reviewing security footage on his laptop. "The camera captured everything," Dad said grimly. "Tyler deliberately pushed Emma down the stairs after she refused to give him her new Christmas present." Emma was the 7-year-old daughter of family friends who'd brought her over for an afternoon playdate while her parents ran errands. The security footage showed Tyler cornering Emma at the top of the basement stairs, demanding she hand over a new art set she'd received for Christmas. When Emma refused and tried to walk away, Tyler grabbed her shoulders and shoved her forcefully down the concrete steps. "It wasn't an accident or a moment of impulse," Dad continued. "Tyler spent several minutes trying to convince Emma to give him her art supplies. When persuasion failed, he calculated that pushing her down the stairs would allow him to take what he wanted." But Mom's next revelation completely changed my understanding of my family's situation. "Monique, I've been recording conversations for weeks using my hearing aid's built-in recording feature," Mom said quietly. "I need you to hear what Jake and Amanda said while we were waiting for the ambulance." Mom's hearing aid was a sophisticated device that included recording capabilities for medical appointments and important conversations. She'd apparently been documenting family interactions without anyone realizing her technology included that feature. The first recording was devastating. Jake's voice was clearly audible as he coached Tyler on what to say to authorities. "Tyler, you need to tell the police that Emma fell down the stairs while you were both playing. Don't mention that you were upset about her toy. Just say it was an accident during normal play." Amanda's voice joined the coaching session. "Tyler, if anyone asks about your behavior lately, tell them that Aunt Monique has been mean to you and making you feel scared. Say that you've been acting out because she threatens you when your parents aren't watching." They were using Emma's serious injury as an opportunity to further frame me for Tyler's behavioral problems. Even while their son was being questioned about pushing another child down concrete stairs, Jake and Amanda were focused on protecting themselves and blaming me for Tyler's actions. But the second recording revealed the full scope of their manipulation. "I think Tyler's finally gone too far," Jake said, apparently believing they had privacy in the hospital waiting room. "But we can use this to prove that Monique's harassment has made Tyler unstable. If we play this right, we can get a restraining order and make sure she can't interfere with our family anymore." Amanda's response chilled me to the bone. Tyler knows exactly what he's doing. He's been pushing boundaries to see how much he can get away with. Emma's accident will actually help us because it shows how Monique's negative influence is affecting Tyler's behavior. They knew Tyler was deliberately causing harm, but instead of addressing his actions, they were using his violence to justify their campaign against me. Emma's broken arm and potential brain injury were simply tools in their effort to avoid accountability for their son's escalating destructiveness. The third recording captured Jake and Amanda planning additional incidents designed to demonstrate my supposed negative influence on Tyler. They discussed having Tyler claim I'd threatened him during future family gatherings, creating false evidence of harassment that would support their restraining order petition. "We need to document everything," Amanda said in the recording. "Tyler's smart enough to follow our instructions, and everyone will believe a child over Monique's denials. By the time we're finished, she'll be banned from all family events." Mom turned off the recording with tears streaming down her face. "Monique, they've been planning this campaign against you for months. Tyler's behavior isn't the result of poor parenting. It's deliberately encouraged because it serves their agenda." I sat in stunned silence, processing the revelation that my brother and sister-in-law had weaponized their son's destructive tendencies to eliminate me from family relationships. Tyler wasn't an out-of-control child whose parents failed to provide appropriate boundaries. He was a carefully coached instrument of manipulation designed to hurt people while protecting Jake and Amanda from consequences. Through the window, I could see Jake's SUV pulling into the driveway. They were returning from the hospital, probably confident that they'd successfully framed Emma's injury as evidence of my harmful influence on Tyler. But they had no idea that Mom had been documenting their real conversations, or that their sophisticated manipulation campaign was about to be exposed by the very technology they'd never suspected existed. Thursday morning brought an unexpected discovery that transformed our understanding of Jake's motivations. While reviewing financial records to calculate potential legal costs for supporting my case against Tyler's destruction, Dad uncovered unauthorized transactions that revealed a much larger criminal conspiracy. "Monique, you need to see this." Dad said, his face pale with shock as he spread bank statements across his kitchen table. "I've been reviewing our accounts to see if we can help with your legal expenses, and I found something terrible." The first statement showed a series of withdrawals from Dad's checking account, each for amounts just under the $500 threshold that would trigger automatic bank notifications. The withdrawals had been occurring monthly for almost 2 years, totaling over $15,000 that Dad had never authorized or received. "I don't understand," I said, examining the transaction details. "These show your signature and account access codes." "Look at this," Dad replied, producing additional documentation from his safe. "These are forged signatures using my information that Jake obtained when he helped me set up online banking last year." The evidence was damning. Jake had used his access to Dad's personal information to create unauthorized payment authorizations, systematically stealing money while maintaining plausible deniability about the transactions. Each forged signature was skillfully executed, suggesting extensive practice and deliberate planning. But Mom's bank statements revealed even more sophisticated theft. Jake had somehow gained access to her retirement account, creating fraudulent loan applications that diverted funds to accounts controlled by him and Amanda. The paperwork showed Mom's forged signature authorizing loans she'd never requested for purposes she'd never approved. $25,000, Dad whispered, calculating the total theft. "Jake has stolen over $40,000 from us over the past 2 years. The financial crimes explained Jake's desperate defensiveness about Tyler's behavior. Any investigation into their family's activities would reveal the systematic theft that funded their expensive lifestyle, including Tyler's private school tuition, Amanda's designer wardrobe, and the luxury SUV parked in my parents' driveway. Jake's been using Tyler's incidents as distractions, I realized. Every time Tyler destroys property or hurts someone, the resulting family drama prevents anyone from looking closely at Jake's other activities." Dad nodded grimly. And if we pursue legal action against Tyler, Jake knows we'll discover his financial crimes during the investigation process. He's been sabotaging our family relationships to protect himself from embezzlement charges. The pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear. Jake had cultivated Tyler's destructive behavior because it served multiple purposes, punishing family members who threatened Jake's control, creating chaos that distracted from financial investigations, and providing ammunition for framing me as an unstable influence on the family. But Dad's investigation had revealed one critical mistake in Jake's criminal strategy. The forged documents contained technical errors that would be immediately apparent to banking fraud investigators, including incorrect account numbers and signature variations that didn't match authenticated samples. "I'm calling the bank's fraud hotline immediately," Dad said, reaching for his phone. "These transactions constitute identity theft and elder abuse, both federal crimes with serious penalties." As Dad reported the theft to banking authorities, I realized that Jake's legal threats against me were actually desperation moves designed to prevent the very investigation that would expose his larger criminal enterprise. He couldn't afford to have authorities scrutinizing his family's activities because such scrutiny would reveal crimes far more serious than Tyler's property destruction. Within an hour, Dad received callbacks from both bank fraud investigators and federal authorities who specialized in elder abuse cases. The evidence Dad had assembled was sufficient to trigger immediate account freezes and formal criminal investigations that would examine all financial activities involving Jake and Amanda. "The FBI will be conducting interviews next week," Dad informed me after completing his reports. "They'll want to examine all interactions between Jake's family and our finances, including any suspicious behavioral patterns that might indicate ongoing criminal activity." Tyler's destructive incidents would now be viewed as potential evidence of a coordinated campaign to manipulate and control elderly victims rather than isolated childhood behavioral problems. Jake's strategy of using family chaos to avoid accountability had backfired spectacularly. But Jake still didn't know that his crimes had been discovered, which meant he would continue manipulating family relationships while federal investigators built their case against him. The next few days would determine whether Jake's desperate gambit to control the family narrative could survive contact with actual law enforcement professionals. By evening, Dad had secured attorney representation for the fraud case and installed additional security measures to prevent further unauthorized access to his accounts. The evidence of Jake's systematic theft was overwhelming, but the emotional damage to our family relationships would take much longer to repair. Friday afternoon brought the crisis that finally forced external authorities to intervene in Tyler's escalating violence. I was at my apartment trying to salvage client relationships when Mom called with terror in her voice. "Monique, you need to get to Roosevelt Elementary School immediately. Tyler attacked a classmate during their holiday party, and there are police and ambulances here." I drove through downtown traffic with my heart racing, knowing that Tyler's violence had finally exceeded Jake and Amanda's ability to control or cover up the consequences. Roosevelt Elementary was surrounded by emergency vehicles when I arrived, their flashing lights creating an ominous atmosphere that matched the gravity of whatever had happened inside. I found Mom sitting in the principal's office with other parents, her face streaked with tears and her hands shaking as she clutched her purse. Principal Dr. Sarah Chen was addressing a group of concerned families while police officers took statements from witnesses. "What exactly happened?" I asked Mom quietly. "Tyler pushed Emma Williams down a flight of concrete stairs during their class party," Mom whispered. "Emma is only 7 years old and she's been rushed to the hospital with a broken arm and possible head injuries." Emma Williams was a sweet child from Tyler's class, whose only mistake had been refusing to give Tyler her new Christmas art set when he demanded it. According to witness statements from other children, Tyler had spent several minutes trying to convince Emma to hand over her presents before becoming frustrated and violent. The security footage from the school's hallway cameras showed Tyler's calculated attack in horrifying detail. He waited until Emma was isolated near the stairwell, then approached her with obvious predatory intent. When Emma tried to walk away from his demands, Tyler grabbed her shoulders and deliberately pushed her down 12 concrete steps. The impact broke Emma's arm in 2 places, Dr. Chen explained to the assembled parents. She also suffered a concussion and multiple bruises. This wasn't an accident during normal play. It was a deliberate assault by Tyler against a smaller child who refused his demands. Jake and Amanda arrived from the hospital where they'd accompanied Emma and her parents, their faces showing no remorse or concern for the injured child. Instead, they immediately began their practiced routine of deflecting responsibility and attacking anyone who questioned Tyler's actions. Tyler was just playing with Emma. Amanda insisted, her voice carrying that familiar combination of defensiveness and aggression. Children roughhouse all the time. Emma probably tripped during normal play activities. Dr. Chen's expression hardened as she responded to Amanda's denial. Mrs. Thompson, we have clear video evidence of Tyler deliberately pushing Emma down the stairs after she refused to give him her belongings. This was not roughhousing or accidental contact. Tyler's been under stress because his Aunt Monique has been harassing and threatening him, Jake added, pointing accusingly in my direction. His recent behavioral changes are directly related to her negative influence on our family dynamics. Even while Emma lay in a hospital bed with serious injuries Tyler had deliberately inflicted, Jake and Amanda were using the incident to support their false narrative about my supposed harassment. They had no shame about exploiting a child's suffering to advance their own agenda. But Dr. Chen had dealt with manipulative parents before and wasn't impressed by their deflection tactics. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson Tyler's behavior patterns show escalating violence and complete lack of remorse for harming other children. We're recommending immediate psychological evaluation and removal from regular classroom settings. The school's decision triggered a cascade of official interventions that Jake and Amanda couldn't control or manipulate. Child Protective Services opened a formal investigation into Tyler's behavioral patterns and his parents' failure to address his violence. Emma's parents filed assault charges through the district attorney's office, forcing legal proceedings that would examine Tyler's history of deliberate harm against others. Most significantly, the police classified Tyler's attack as felony assault of a minor, which triggered mandatory reporting requirements that would expose Jake and Amanda's long pattern of covering up their son's destructive behavior. Tyler will not be returning to Roosevelt Elementary, Dr. Chen announced firmly. We cannot ensure the safety of other children while Tyler remains in our care. We're recommending specialized therapeutic intervention and complete psychological evaluation. Jake's face turned red with fury as he realized their family's carefully maintained public image was crumbling beyond repair. Dr. Chen, you're discriminating against Tyler because of false accusations spread by unstable family members. We'll be contacting our attorney about this persecution of our son. But their threats carried no weight with school administrators who prioritized student safety over parental manipulation. Tyler's violence had finally reached a level where external authorities would intervene regardless of Jake and Amanda's objections or deflection attempts. As I watched EMTs load Emma into an ambulance while her parents wept beside her stretcher, I realized that Tyler's calculated cruelty had finally exceeded his parents' ability to protect him from consequences. The system that had failed to address property destruction was forced to respond when Tyler's violence threatened the physical safety of other children. Jake and Amanda's campaign to frame me for Tyler's behavioral problems had collapsed under the weight of documented evidence and independent witness testimony, but the real reckoning was still coming, and it would reveal crimes far more serious than anyone in my family had imagined possible. Saturday morning brought an unexpected development that transformed Tyler's individual acts of violence into a community-wide crisis. I was reviewing financial damage from the week's events when Mom called with news that neighborhood families had organized an emergency meeting about Jake's family. "Monique, you need to get over here." Mom said, her voice tight with anxiety. "There are 20 families in our living room, and they're all talking about Tyler's behavior patterns. This is much bigger than we realized." I arrived to find my parents' house packed with neighbors I'd known for years, all carrying documentation and photographs that painted a horrifying picture of systematic destruction throughout our quiet suburban community. Mrs. Henderson sat near the fireplace with a thick folder of evidence, while other families had arranged their materials chronologically across Mom's dining room table. "We've been comparing notes," Mrs. Henderson explained as I joined the group. "Tyler's behavior isn't limited to family incidents. He's been terrorizing this entire neighborhood for over a year, and Jake and Amanda have been covering up every single incident." The evidence was overwhelming and disturbing. The Walsh family had security footage showing Tyler deliberately killing their pet rabbits by throwing rocks at their outdoor hutch, then watching with obvious satisfaction as the animals suffered and died. When confronted, Jake had claimed Tyler was learning about nature, and Amanda had insisted the rabbits died from unrelated illnesses. The Stevens family presented photographs of their garage after Tyler had deliberately started a fire using matches stolen from their outdoor grill. The fire had caused $8,000 in damage and could have spread to their house if neighbors hadn't spotted the smoke quickly. Jake and Amanda had blamed neighborhood kids and denied Tyler's involvement despite witness testimony placing him at the scene. Most disturbing was the Martinez family's account of Tyler's attempted assault on their 4-year-old daughter, Sophia. Tyler had cornered Sophia in their backyard and threatened to hurt her unless she gave him her bicycle. When Sophia screamed for help, Tyler had pushed her down and tried to drag the bicycle away before her older brother intervened. Tyler told Sophia that if she told anyone what happened, he would come back and hurt her worse. Maria Martinez reported her voice shaking with emotion. "My 4-year-old daughter has been having nightmares for weeks because an 8-year-old boy threatened her with violence." Each family had experienced the same pattern: Tyler's deliberate destructive or violent behavior, followed by Jake and Amanda's immediate denial deflection and threats of legal action against anyone who complained. The Thompson family had systematically silenced an entire neighborhood through intimidation while enabling their son's escalating cruelty. "We've all been isolated and afraid," admitted Tom Stevens. "Jake threatened to sue us for defamation if we shared details about Tyler's behavior with other families. We didn't realize that everyone was dealing with the same problems." But the community meeting had revealed something more disturbing than Tyler's individual acts of violence. Several families reported that Jake had attempted to bribe them into silence about Tyler's behavior, offering cash payments in exchange for signed statements, claiming the incidents were accidents or misunderstandings. "Jake offered us $2,000 to sign a paper saying Tyler never hurt our rabbits," Mrs. Walsh revealed. "He said it would help Tyler get appropriate psychological care instead of being labeled as a violent child. We refused, but other families might have accepted similar offers." The bribery attempts suggested that Jake understood the criminal nature of Tyler's behavior and was actively working to suppress evidence that could be used against their family in legal proceedings. This wasn't ignorant parenting or denial about childhood behavioral problems. It was deliberate obstruction of justice to protect Tyler from accountability. Principal Dr. Chen arrived during the meeting with additional documentation from Roosevelt Elementary. Tyler's school records showed a pattern of violence, theft, and intimidation that teachers had been reporting for months, only to have Jake and Amanda dismiss each incident as either accidental or provoked by other children's behavior. "Tyler has threatened to kill classmates who wouldn't share their lunch money," Dr. Chen reported. "He's stolen personal items from teachers' desks, destroyed other children's artwork, and shown complete lack of remorse for any harmful behavior. We've been documenting everything because we knew this situation would eventually require legal intervention." The community had reached a unanimous decision they were collectively filing complaints with Child Protective Services, the police department, and the district attorney's office, demanding immediate action to protect neighborhood children from Tyler's escalating violence. "We're also petitioning the Homeowners Association to investigate whether Jake's family violates community standards for peaceful residential living," announced Neighborhood Association President Linda Foster. Tyler's behavior has created an atmosphere of fear that's affecting property values and family safety throughout our community. But Jake and Amanda's response to the community meeting demonstrated their complete lack of concern for their neighbor's legitimate safety fears. Instead of addressing Tyler's documented violence, they doubled down on threats and intimidation designed to silence their critics. Jake called me this morning and threatened to sue me for organizing a harassment campaign against Tyler, Mrs. Henderson reported. He claims we're discriminating against Tyler's learning differences and violating his civil rights by demanding accountability for his actions. The legal threats revealed Jake's fundamental misunderstanding of his situation. A neighborhood full of documented victims with photographic evidence and witness testimony couldn't be silenced through intimidation tactics that had worked against individual families in isolation. By evening, local news had picked up the story about community tensions over an uncontrolled child whose parents refused to address his violent behavior. The television coverage focused on neighborhood safety concerns and the failure of authorities to protect residents from ongoing threats posed by Tyler's escalating aggression. Jake and Amanda's carefully maintained public image as a perfect family was crumbling under community scrutiny that couldn't be controlled through their usual manipulation tactics. But they still had no idea that federal investigators were building a criminal case that would destroy their lives completely. Sunday morning brought the confrontation that would finally expose the full scope of Jake's criminal enterprise. Dad had spent the weekend coordinating with federal banking investigators and preparing comprehensive documentation of the financial theft he'd discovered. When Jake arrived for what he assumed was a routine family breakfast, he walked into a carefully planned trap that would change everything. "Jake, we need to discuss your unauthorized access to our bank accounts," Dad said calmly, placing printed evidence across the kitchen table while Jake was still removing his coat. I watched my brother's face cycle through several emotions as he processed Dad's words, confusion, calculation, and finally panic as he realized the extent of Dad's investigation. Jake's usual confident demeanor evaporated as he stared at bank statements showing 2 years of systematic theft. "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about," Jake said, but his voice carried none of its typical authority. "If there are problems with your accounts, you should contact the bank directly." "I did contact the bank," Dad replied, "along with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, the state elder abuse prosecutors, and the Federal Identity Theft Task Force. They're all very interested in discussing your forgery skills." Jake's face went completely white as he understood that his financial crimes had been discovered and reported to multiple law enforcement agencies. But instead of accepting responsibility or showing remorse, he immediately launched into the desperate lies that would seal his fate. "Dad, you're confused about these transactions," Jake insisted, his voice becoming increasingly frantic. "You authorized all of these withdrawals yourself, but you're having memory problems and don't remember giving permission. I've been worried about your cognitive decline for months." The accusation that Dad was suffering from dementia was Jake's last desperate attempt to avoid accountability for his crimes. By claiming Dad was mentally incompetent, Jake hoped to discredit the evidence and position himself as a concerned son trying to protect confused elderly parents. Amanda immediately supported Jake's fabricated narrative with practiced lies that revealed the extent of their coordination. "Uncle Robert, Jake, and I have been discussing our concerns about your memory issues," she said with false sympathy. "You've been forgetting conversations and making financial decisions that don't make sense." But Dad had anticipated this exact defense strategy and prepared accordingly. "Jake, here are authenticated bank records showing my signatures compared to the forged signatures on unauthorized withdrawals. I've also provided handwriting analysis and medical records proving my cognitive competence to federal investigators." Dad's meticulous preparation had eliminated Jake's ability to claim confusion or medical incapacity. The evidence clearly showed deliberate forgery and systematic theft targeting elderly family members' crimes that carried serious federal penalties, regardless of the perpetrator's relationship to his victims. Jake's desperation became increasingly apparent as he realized his lies weren't working. "Dad, if you proceed with these false accusations, you'll destroy our family permanently. Tyler will grow up knowing his grandfather chose money over family relationships." The emotional manipulation that had worked for years was finally failing because Dad understood that Jake's crimes represented a fundamental betrayal of trust that couldn't be forgiven or ignored. Jake had stolen money intended for his parents' retirement security while using his son's violence to distract from his criminal activities. "Jake, you've stolen over $40,000 from us while teaching Tyler that destroying other people's property has no consequences," Dad replied firmly. "You're the one who destroyed our family relationships by choosing crime over honesty." But Jake's final desperate gambit revealed the true extent of his criminal thinking. He pulled out documents he'd prepared in advance, claiming they proved Dad had given permission for all financial transactions and was now suffering from dementia-related paranoia. "I have medical documentation showing Dad's cognitive decline," Jake announced, producing obviously fabricated papers with forged medical letterhead. "These documents prove that Dad requested my financial assistance, but now can't remember authorizing the transactions." The forged medical records were Jake's most serious mistake because they provided clear evidence of ongoing criminal activity designed to support elder abuse. Federal investigators would view these documents as proof that Jake was actively attempting to have his father declared incompetent to avoid prosecution for financial crimes. Dad's response was swift and devastating. "Jake, I've already provided those forged medical records to federal investigators as evidence of your ongoing criminal activity. Creating fraudulent medical documentation is a separate federal felony that carries a 10-year prison sentence." Jake stared at his father with the dawning realization that his criminal enterprise was completely exposed and his legal situation was hopeless. Federal charges for elder abuse, identity theft, forgery, and fraud would result in decades of prison time regardless of his family relationships or previous clean criminal record. But even facing the destruction of his life, Jake couldn't resist one final threat that revealed his complete lack of remorse for the harm he'd caused. "Dad, if you don't withdraw these accusations immediately, I'll make sure Tyler knows that his grandfather chose to destroy our family over imaginary financial problems. You'll never see your grandson again, and it will be entirely your fault." The threat to weaponize Tyler's relationship with his grandparents was Jake's final desperate attempt to avoid accountability for crimes that were already under federal investigation. But Dad's response showed that Jake's manipulation tactics had finally lost all power over family members who understood his true character. "Jake, federal investigators will be arresting you within the week. Tyler's relationship with us will be determined by family courts, not by your threats." Monday morning brought the intervention that finally forced accountability for Tyler's escalating violence. Child Protective Services had completed their investigation into Tyler's behavioral patterns and his parents' failure to address his dangerous actions, and their conclusions would change everything about our family's situation. CPS investigator Rebecca Foster arrived at my parents' house with comprehensive documentation and legal authority to make immediate decisions about Tyler's living arrangements. Her report detailed months of investigation that had revealed a pattern of violence manipulation and parental enabling that posed serious risks to community safety. Based on our investigation, Tyler exhibits signs of conduct disorder characterized by deliberate aggression toward people and animals, destruction of property, and complete lack of remorse for harmful behavior, Ms. Foster explained as our family gathered in the living room. More concerning is his parents' systematic enabling of this violence through denial cover-ups and failure to seek appropriate intervention. Tyler sat between Jake and Amanda, his expression showing none of the remorse or fear that would be appropriate given the seriousness of these proceedings. Instead, he appeared calculating and alert, apparently confident that his parents would protect him from consequences, as they always had before. The investigation documented Tyler's torture and killing of neighborhood pets, deliberate destruction of other people's property, physical assault of smaller children, and threats of future violence against anyone who reports his behavior. Ms. Foster continued, "These actions demonstrate escalating antisocial behavior that requires immediate intervention." Jake and Amanda's response followed their established pattern of denial and deflection, despite overwhelming evidence of Tyler's dangerous behavior. Tyler is just an energetic child who's been unfairly targeted by neighbors and family members who don't understand normal childhood development, Amanda insisted. But Ms. Foster's report included expert psychological evaluations that demolished Jake and Amanda's claims about normal childhood behavior. Dr. Patricia Williams, a licensed child psychologist, evaluated Tyler and found evidence of callous, unemotional traits, typically associated with early psychopathic behavior. Tyler shows no empathy for his victims and demonstrates sophisticated manipulation skills far beyond typical childhood development. The psychological evaluation revealed that Tyler's violence wasn't the result of poor impulse control or inadequate parenting, but rather evidence of personality traits that required intensive therapeutic intervention before they became permanently established patterns. Tyler deliberately targets victims who are smaller or more vulnerable than himself, plans his attacks to avoid detection, and shows satisfaction when describing the pain he's caused others, Dr. Williams had reported. Without immediate intervention, his behavior will continue escalating toward more serious violence. Ms. Foster's most damning evidence came from interviews with Tyler himself, who'd been remarkably honest about his motivations and methods when speaking with trained investigators. Tyler told our psychologists that he enjoys hurting people and animals because it makes him feel powerful. He specifically stated that he targets victims who deserve punishment for not giving him what he wants. The CPS investigation had also uncovered Jake and Amanda's systematic campaign to suppress evidence of Tyler's behavior through bribes, threats, and manipulation of witness statements. Tyler's parents have actively obstructed our investigation by coaching Tyler to lie to investigators, threatening witnesses who provided testimony, and attempting to discredit reports from teachers, neighbors, and family members. But the most shocking revelation was Tyler's own admission that his parents had encouraged his violent behavior as a tool for manipulating family relationships. Tyler reported that his parents told him to make Aunt Monique sorry for causing problems in their family. He understood that destroying her property and threatening her would help his parents get what they wanted. Jake and Amanda's faces went completely white as they realized Tyler had revealed their conspiracy to use his violence as a weapon against me. Their carefully maintained claims about Tyler's innocent mistakes had been destroyed by their son's own truthful statements to investigators. Based on these findings, CPS is immediately removing Tyler from his parents' custody and placing him in specialized therapeutic foster care, Ms. Foster announced. Tyler poses a danger to other children and requires intensive behavioral intervention that his parents have repeatedly refused to provide. The removal order was swift and non-negotiable. Tyler would be placed with foster parents trained to handle children with severe behavioral problems, where he would receive daily therapy and constant supervision, designed to address his antisocial tendencies before they became permanent personality traits. Jake and Amanda Thompson must complete court-ordered parenting classes, individual psychological counseling, and supervised visitation training before any contact with Tyler will be permitted, Ms. Foster continued. They will also be required to pay restitution to all families Tyler has harmed under their supervision. But Tyler's reaction to the removal order revealed the true extent of his manipulative sophistication. Instead of showing distress or fear about being separated from his parents, Tyler immediately began calculating how to use this situation to his advantage. "Can I live with Grandma and Grandpa instead?" Tyler asked Ms. Foster with practiced innocence. My parents don't understand that I need help, but my grandparents love me and would take better care of me. Even while being removed from his home for dangerous behavior, Tyler was attempting to manipulate authorities into placing him with relatives he could continue exploiting. His complete lack of genuine emotion about family separation confirmed the psychological evaluation's findings about his callous, unemotional traits. Ms. Foster's response was firm and final. Tyler, you'll be living with specially trained foster parents who understand how to help children with behavioral problems like yours. Your grandparents and other family members need protection from your actions until you learn healthier ways of relating to other people. As CPS workers prepared to transport Tyler to his new placement, he made one final attempt to manipulate the situation by claiming remorse he clearly didn't feel. "I'm sorry I hurt people," he said with obviously rehearsed sincerity. "I promise I'll be good if you let me stay with my family." But trained CPS professionals recognized Tyler's performance for what it was, another manipulation attempt designed to avoid accountability for dangerous behavior. Within an hour, Tyler was gone, beginning intensive therapy that would determine whether his antisocial tendencies could be addressed before becoming permanent character traits. Jake and Amanda were left staring at their empty house, finally facing consequences for their systematic enabling of Tyler's violence. But their legal problems were just beginning as federal investigators prepared to arrest Jake for his financial crimes against his elderly parents. Tuesday brought the federal intervention that transformed Jake's financial crimes from family problems into serious criminal charges, carrying decades of prison time. FBI agents arrived at Jake's house with arrest warrants, search warrants, and asset seizure orders that would strip away every benefit he'd gained through years of systematic theft. Special Agent Maria Gonzalez led the investigation team that had been building a comprehensive case against Jake for elder abuse, identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against vulnerable adults. The evidence Dad had provided was devastating, but federal investigators had uncovered additional crimes that expanded the case far beyond simple theft. Jacob Thompson, you're under arrest for multiple federal felonies, including wire fraud, identity, theft targeting elderly victims, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse, Agent Gonzalez announced as handcuffs clicked around Jake's wrists. You have the right to remain attorney. Amanda watched in horror as FBI agents systematically searched their house, seizing computers, financial documents, and evidence of the lavish lifestyle Jake's crimes had funded. Their expensive furniture, luxury cars, and designer belongings were all subject to federal asset forfeiture, designed to compensate Jake's victims. The federal investigation had revealed that Jake's crimes extended far beyond stealing from our parents. He'd been systematically defrauding elderly clients at his accounting firm, using his professional access to forge documents and redirect retirement funds into accounts he controlled. The total theft exceeded $200,000 across dozens of elderly victims. Jake used his position as a trusted financial advisor to target vulnerable seniors. Agent Gonzalez explained to me during a victim interview, your parents were actually among his smaller victims. Most of his targets lost their entire retirement savings to his fraudulent schemes. The federal charges carried mandatory minimum sentences that would keep Jake in prison for at least 15 years, with potential maximum sentences exceeding 30 years if convicted on all counts. His accounting license was permanently revoked, his professional reputation was destroyed, and his family's financial security was completely eliminated. But the asset seizure process provided immediate justice for Jake's victims. Federal marshals calculated the total value of Jake and Amanda's possessions, including their house cars, jewelry, and luxury items, then liquidated everything to create a victim compensation fund. Jake's house is worth approximately $400,000, the federal prosecutor informed me. Along with his vehicles and other assets, we expect to recover enough money to fully compensate all victims for their losses, plus interest and penalties. My portion of the compensation would total $55,000, covering my destroyed laptop, stolen backup drives, damaged equipment, lost income from canceled contracts, and legal fees incurred while seeking justice. The amount exceeded my original losses because federal law included punitive damages for crimes targeting family members. Amanda's situation was particularly devastating because she'd been classified as a co-conspirator in Jake's financial crimes. Her teaching license was permanently revoked due to her involvement in identity theft, and she faced potential criminal charges if prosecutors determined she'd actively participated in targeting elderly victims. Amanda Thompson knowingly benefited from proceeds of elder abuse and helped conceal her husband's criminal activities, the federal prosecutor explained. She purchased luxury items with stolen money while helping intimidate victims who threatened to report the crimes. The legal proceedings moved with surprising speed because Jake's evidence trail was overwhelming and his crimes were clearly documented. Federal investigators had bank records, forged documents, victim testimony, and electronic evidence that made conviction inevitable regardless of Jake's defense strategy. Jake's attorney advised him to accept a plea bargain that would reduce his sentence to 12 years in federal prison in exchange for cooperation with ongoing investigations into other financial crimes. The alternative was a trial that would likely result in maximum sentences on all charges, keeping him imprisoned until his 60s. Jake's cooperation could help us identify other elderly victims and recover additional stolen funds, Agent Gonzalez explained. His accounting firm may have enabled systematic elder abuse by multiple employees who targeted vulnerable clients. But Jake's pride and denial prevented him from accepting responsibility even when facing overwhelming evidence of his crimes. He insisted that his elderly victims had misunderstood their financial arrangements and claimed that his theft was actually investment advice that had been misinterpreted by confused seniors. The trial date was set for March, giving prosecutors time to coordinate with victims across multiple states who'd been targeted by Jake's financial schemes. My parents would testify about the emotional trauma of discovering their son had systematically stolen money intended for their retirement security. Amanda's desperate attempts to save her family's reputation included throwing Jake completely under the bus in hopes of avoiding criminal charges herself. She provided testimony claiming that Jake had hidden his criminal activities from her and that she'd believed their luxury lifestyle was funded through legitimate business success. But federal investigators had evidence showing Amanda's active participation in spending stolen money and intimidating victims who threatened to report Jake's crimes. Her attempt to claim ignorance was undermined by recorded conversations where she discussed specific victims and helped plan cover-up strategies. By week's end, Jake and Amanda's expensive house was in federal custody. Their luxury vehicles had been repossessed, and their bank accounts were frozen pending victim compensation proceedings. They'd lost everything they'd gained through years of criminal activity while facing legal consequences that would destroy their lives permanently. The financial justice was satisfying, but the emotional damage Jake had caused to our family would take much longer to heal. 3 months later, our family's healing process was showing encouraging progress despite the devastating revelations about Jake's criminal behavior and Tyler's dangerous violence. The therapeutic interventions that had seemed impossible while Jake and Amanda controlled the narrative were finally producing positive results now that truth and accountability had replaced lies and manipulation. Tyler's placement in specialized therapeutic foster care had been surprisingly successful, demonstrating that his antisocial behavior was learned rather than inherent. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, his therapeutic foster mother, was a licensed child psychologist with extensive experience helping children overcome severe behavioral problems through consistent boundaries and intensive intervention. Tyler is making remarkable progress once he understood that manipulation and violence won't achieve his goals, Dr. Martinez reported during our monthly family meeting. Children with his behavioral patterns often improve dramatically when they're removed from environments that enable their destructive choices. The transformation was evident during supervised visits, where Tyler had to follow strict behavioral protocols designed to ensure everyone's safety. For the first time in years, Tyler was learning to express frustration through words rather than violence. Ask for things politely rather than demanding them, and accept rejection without retaliation. Tyler is beginning to understand that other people have feelings and rights that deserve respect. Dr. Martinez continued. His empathy development was delayed by his parents' enabling of his violent behavior, but children his age can still learn healthy relationship skills with proper intervention. Most encouraging was Tyler's genuine remorse for the harm he'd caused to family members and neighbors. His apology letters showed developing understanding of how his actions had affected other people, marking significant progress from his previous callous indifference to others' pain. The letter Tyler wrote to me was particularly meaningful. Aunt Monique, I'm sorry I broke your laptop and stole your backup drives. I was trying to hurt you because Mom and Dad said you were causing problems for our family. I understand now that you were just trying to help me learn better behavior. I hope you can forgive me when I'm ready to be a better person. Tyler's acknowledgement that his parents had encouraged his destructive behavior toward me confirmed everything Mom's recordings had revealed about Jake and Amanda's manipulation of their son. But his growing awareness of right and wrong suggested that intensive therapy was successfully addressing his antisocial tendencies. Patricia and Robert were attending family therapy to process the trauma of discovering their son had systematically stolen from them while using their grandson as a weapon against other family members. The therapeutic work was helping them establish healthier boundaries and develop strategies for supporting Tyler's recovery without enabling future manipulation. We're learning to separate our love for Jake and Tyler from accountability for their harmful actions, Mom explained during one of our weekly dinners. Loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from consequences that could help them change. Dad's recovery from the financial and emotional betrayal was slower but steady. The federal compensation had restored his retirement security, but the knowledge that his son had targeted him as a victim required ongoing therapeutic work to process and understand. I keep wondering if there were warning signs I missed, Dad admitted, but the therapist helps me understand that skilled manipulators deliberately hide their true nature from family members who love them unconditionally. My own healing process included rebuilding my graphic design business with the federal compensation money and developing new client relationships that were stronger than those I'd lost. The experience of fighting for truth and accountability had given me confidence and resilience that enhanced my professional reputation. Clients respect someone who stands up for themselves and maintains professional standards even under family pressure, my new business mentor observed. Your story of overcoming adversity has become a powerful marketing tool. The community response to our family's situation had been overwhelmingly supportive once the truth about Tyler's violence and Jake's financial crimes became public knowledge. Neighbors who'd been intimidated into silence were now sharing their experiences and supporting each other through the healing process. Your family's courage to seek justice inspired other families to report similar problems, Mrs. Henderson told me. 3 other families in our neighborhood have gotten help for children with behavioral problems because you proved that accountability is possible. Jake's imprisonment had eliminated his ability to manipulate family relationships or threaten people who reported Tyler's behavior. Without their primary enabler, Amanda was forced to confront the reality of her son's problems and her own role in creating them. Amanda's court-ordered therapy was addressing her narcissistic tendencies and teaching her to prioritize Tyler's actual needs over her image as a perfect mother. The process was difficult and often unsuccessful, but occasional breakthrough moments offered hope for eventual change. Amanda is slowly accepting that her enabling of Tyler's violence caused serious harm, her therapist reported. She's beginning to understand that getting Tyler proper help requires admitting her previous parenting mistakes. The supervised visitation program allowed Tyler to maintain family connections while ensuring his continued therapeutic progress. These visits followed strict protocols that prevented manipulation and reinforced the behavioral changes Tyler was learning in foster care. By spring, our family had established new traditions and relationships based on honesty, accountability, and mutual respect rather than fear, manipulation, and enabling. The healing process would continue for years, but the foundation for genuine recovery was finally in place. Tyler's story had become a cautionary tale about the importance of addressing behavioral problems early, but also an inspiring example of how intensive intervention could help even severely troubled children develop empathy and healthy relationship skills. 6 months after that devastating Christmas party, I stood in the conference room of Peterson Marketing, presenting my latest campaign concepts on a brand new laptop to executives who'd specifically requested to work with me again. The irony wasn't lost on me that my professional reputation had grown stronger through the adversity Tyler's destruction had initially caused. Monique, your resilience and professionalism during last year's challenges impressed our entire leadership team, Margaret Peterson explained after approving my largest contract ever. We want to partner with someone who maintains integrity under pressure and turns obstacles into opportunities for growth. My graphic design business had not only recovered from Tyler's sabotage, but expanded into areas I'd never imagined possible. The story of fighting for accountability against family manipulation had attracted clients who valued authenticity and strength, leading to speaking engagements about professional resilience and boundary setting in toxic relationships. Your presentation about standing up to family pressure while maintaining professional standards resonated with our entire marketing team. Margaret continued. We'd like you to develop a workshop series for our corporate clients about dealing with difficult relationships in business contexts. The workshop series would pay more than my previous annual income from Peterson Marketing, demonstrating how surviving Tyler's attacks had actually accelerated my professional growth beyond what would have been possible without that crisis. Tyler's progress in therapeutic foster care had exceeded everyone's expectations, except Dr. Martinez, who'd insisted from the beginning that his antisocial behavior was learned rather than innate. After 6 months of intensive therapy and consistent boundaries, Tyler was showing genuine empathy and developing healthy relationship skills. Tyler asked if he could write you another letter, Dr. Martinez informed me during our latest family meeting. He wants to share something important about his recovery process. Tyler's letter reflected remarkable growth in self-awareness and emotional development. Aunt Monique, I've been learning about how my actions affected other people's lives. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that destroying your laptop hurt your business and made you lose money you needed for living. I was trying to make you suffer because I thought that would make Mom and Dad happy with me. I understand now that hurting people to get approval is wrong and doesn't create real love or friendship. I hope when I'm ready to live with family again, I can show you that I've learned to be kind instead of cruel. The letter demonstrated Tyler's developing understanding of cause and effect, empathy for others' experiences, and motivation to change his behavior for internal rather than external reasons. Dr. Martinez was optimistic that Tyler could eventually return to family life if his progress continued. Jake's federal prison sentence had removed his ability to manipulate family relationships, but it had also forced our entire family to confront the systematic dysfunction his behavior had created. The family therapy sessions were helping everyone understand how manipulation and enabling had damaged our relationships for years before Tyler's violence made the problems impossible to ignore. Jake's criminal behavior was enabled by family patterns that prioritized keeping peace over addressing harmful actions, our family therapist explained. Tyler learned those same manipulation skills because they worked effectively in your family system until external authorities intervened. Patricia and Robert were developing healthier boundaries and communication skills that would prevent future manipulation while supporting Tyler's continued recovery. They'd learned to separate genuine love from enabling behavior that protected harmful actions from consequences. We love Tyler enough to insist that he learn healthy relationship skills. Mom explained to relatives who criticized their support for Tyler's placement in therapeutic care. Real love means helping someone become their best self, not protecting them from growth opportunities. Amanda's court-ordered therapy had produced mixed results with periods of genuine insight, alternating with attempts to manipulate therapeutic processes for sympathy and family reunification. Her progress was much slower than Tyler's, suggesting that adult narcissistic patterns were more resistant to change than childhood behavioral problems. Amanda is learning that Tyler's recovery requires her own fundamental change rather than surface compliance with court orders, her therapist reported. She's beginning to understand that her previous parenting style caused serious harm, but applying that knowledge consistently remains difficult. The neighborhood families who'd been terrorized by Tyler's violence had found healing through community support and shared advocacy for children's safety. Their collective action had inspired similar organizing efforts in other communities dealing with uncontrolled youth violence. Your family's courage to seek justice instead of covering up Tyler's behavior has helped dozens of other families address similar problems, Mrs. Henderson told me during a neighborhood barbecue. Children throughout our community are safer because you refuse to enable Tyler's violence. The federal compensation from Jake's financial crimes had allowed me to expand my business beyond freelance design into motivational speaking and consulting about professional resilience. My story of overcoming family manipulation while maintaining career integrity resonated with audiences across the country. Your experience demonstrates that standing up for yourself, even against family pressure, can actually accelerate professional growth, observed Dr. Lisa Chen, a business psychologist who'd attended one of my workshops. Clients want to work with people who demonstrate integrity under pressure. As I prepared for my largest presentation yet addressing a conference of marketing executives about turning personal adversity into professional advantage, I reflected on the profound life lesson Tyler's destruction had ultimately taught me. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when that refusal means standing alone against family pressure and social expectations. True family relationships are built on mutual respect, accountability, and genuine care for each other's growth, not on protecting harmful actions from consequences. Tyler's recovery had demonstrated that even children with severe behavioral problems could learn empathy and healthy relationship skills when consistently held accountable for their choices. His progress proved that love, expressed through boundaries and consequences, was more effective than love expressed through protection from accountability. Jake's imprisonment had shown that adult manipulators rarely change without external pressure that makes their destructive behavior impossible to continue. Sometimes protecting other family members requires accepting that consequences might permanently alter relationships with people who refuse to acknowledge their harmful actions. Most importantly, I'd learned that my own integrity and professional success were not dependent on family approval or acceptance. Standing up for truth and accountability had actually strengthened my career and personal relationships with people who valued authenticity over compliance with dysfunctional family dynamics. The story of that Christmas party had become a testament to the power of truth over manipulation, accountability, over enabling and genuine love, over destructive protection. Tyler's laptop attack had seemed like the end of everything I'd worked toward, but it had actually been the beginning of a stronger, more authentic life, built on healthy boundaries and mutual respect. Have you ever faced a situation where family loyalty conflicted with doing what was right? How did you handle the pressure to stay silent when someone you loved was causing harm to others? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about setting boundaries with family members who engage in destructive behavior. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help it reach other people who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming adversity and building resilience in difficult relationships. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of accountability in family relationships. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting my journey toward healing and growth. Remember that standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, can lead to stronger relationships and personal integrity that serves you throughout your life. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you love by maintaining healthy boundaries that promote genuine growth and mutual respect.